I mean, look, think about it. Anybody that ran against Nixon got killed or shot.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you were in any other place in the world, I mean, you would think, yeah, sure, I know what's going on here.
So my question goes, such as a successful trial about the assassination of Martin Luther King, do you think there's a possibility that that could happen with other homicides of North American characters such as JFK or, well, his brother Robert?
Oh, yes. I think John Kennedy was assassinated by the CIA and other organizations in the political class. Bobby Kennedy was assassinated by that same group or parts of it. Martin Luther King was certainly assassinated. I mean, there was a trial before a judge and a jury that found the government complicit, the U.S. government, and specifically the military intelligence units participating in the assassination of Martin Luther King. George Wallace, a conservative who was running against Nixon in 1972, appears to have been shot. I mean, look, think about it. Anybody that ran against Nixon got killed or shot.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you were in any other place in the world, and you saw people that were competing against a leader getting killed under mysterious circumstances, I mean, you would think, yeah, sure, I know what's going on here. When we see these Russian diplomats dying of heart attacks and the like today, we're inclined to say, well, that's Putin or somebody in the background that's doing this. The only reason we don't do it in the United States is we've been indoctrinated not to believe our leaders can do that. We think we're different. Everybody else does this kind of thing, but America is different.
JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King. We saw that a few weeks ago. We looked at, as you mentioned, the court transcript of the verdict in 1999 that declares the government guilty of assassinating King. I just discovered this book recently by Susan Williams, a South African researcher.
Yeah.
And
it's a normal tool of statecraft, and there's a reason they do it. Charismatic people, there's only so many of them. They don't come along every day. So we had John Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King, and George Wallace was charismatic for a Southern conservative. But once you take these people out, there's nobody to replace them. They don't just come along any day. And the left leadership in the United States were assassinated in the 1960s and 70s. And they never came back. Obama was the first charismatic leader on the left. I mean, and he was truly charismatic. I don't care what your politics are. I'll tell you something. I was driving my car in the middle of a small hurricane, and I was listening to Barack Obama address the Democratic convention a couple of years before the election prior to the one that he first ran in. And I literally wept. I mean, the guy was just unbelievable, inspiring. So when you have a leader like that and you take him out, there's not a replacement for it. And you might ask, well, why didn't they assassinate Obama? Well, Obama sold out. He basically immediately caved. He wasn't going to investigate George W. Bush for lying us into war in Iraq, which is a high crime and a war crime. There's all kinds of evidence that he did it, but Obama said, we're not going to look back. We're going to look forward. Well, that's a ludicrous argument.
This was kind of shocking. I only discovered this a few months ago. And, thanks to your book, hopefully more of this information comes out, how the CIA weaponized the term conspiracy theorists starting in 1967.
We found this out that in 1967, the CIA issued a memo to all their station sites all over the world and told them that there was a criticism of the Warren Commission report and that it was bringing into question the legitimacy of the entire political system. And it threatened it, and the CIA needed to combat it. And the memo said, nobody's talking about this, don't bring it up. But if they're talking about it, then you need to get involved and say to your media contacts that there's no evidence for this, and these are just people who are under the sway of communists, and they're probably being, trying to get wealthy. They are in love with their theories. And they go on to say someone would have talked and you can't keep a secret and things like that. It's all the things that people say today about conspiracy theory. So this was done in 1967. We find out about it in 1976 through a mistaken release from a Freedom of Information inquiry. Today, nobody in America doubts that John Kennedy there was more to it than what we got out of the Warren Commission. But the media doesn't say it. The media is totally silent about it. And it perpetuates this taboo against suspecting the political elites. We have a constitution. All the people in the government, from top to bottom, swear an oath to support the Constitution. The president swears an oath to support and defend the Constitution. The United States right now is operating outside the Constitution. And I mean this in a very simple way. I'm not talking about killing people. We haven't had a declaration of war since World War II. We fought the Korean War under a United Nations statement that asked us to go into war, but our Congress never authorized it or declared it. We've been operating under what are now called authorizations to apply military force, something like that. It's just a term. We had one in the Gulf of Tonkin that authorized Vietnam War. We had one in 2001 that authorized attacking anybody connected with 9/11. We had one in 2002 that authorized the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. We still say we're operating on the 2001 authorization, but there has been no declaration of war, and that on its face is unconstitutional. Add to that we're signatories to the United Nations Charter. If you read the Charter, it's very simple. You can't attack other countries that don't attack you. Get this, you can't even threaten to attack other countries. We do that routinely. We have more or less discarded the Constitution when it comes to our adventures overseas and our persecution of whistleblowers and that kind of thing in our own country. We need to get back to the law. And the key to it is young people in your generation. We need to do some simple things. We need to have a law that defines state crimes against democracy as a specific kind of crime that calls for particular methods of investigation and prosecution and punishment. We have juvenile crime as a category, white collar crime as a category. We need state crimes against democracy as a category. Now, when we tried the Nuremberg war crimes trials, it's very instructive. I wrote an article about this. It got no play. I couldn't get it published in the United States, but it was published in a journal called Contemporary Politics in London. And what it did was compare the Iraq War, what the Nazis were tried for in Nuremberg, which was conspiring to overthrow the government and take it into an aggressive war. That was Article 1 of the prosecution. We have a body of law that we can draw on, but we need to specify this crime, and we need to start prosecuting it and investigating it. The investigation is the most important thing in terms of the next step. Once you define and into law the term type of crime, then you need to say how it gets investigated. Right now, it's investigated by commissions of insiders and cronies. I mean, these are people that if they actually did their job and prosecuted and found, uncovered the truth, they'd never be able to work in Washington again. They would never be able to have access. So you get these cronies in there and they cover it up. You're familiar with the Warren Commission, but the 9/11 Commission was even worse. The head of the commission, the executive director, a guy named Zelikow, who was a close aide to Condoleezza Rice, he was the executive director of the 9/11 Commission, and he outlined the final report in detail before the commission ever met. So what we need to do is we need to investigate crimes in a traditional way. When we have an assassination, we should cordon off the area, check it out for fingerprints, get all the crime scene evidence. Kennedy's car, the limousine he was riding in, he was taken to Parkland Hospital. The car had blood all over the back of the trunk where his brains had been blown out. Literally, his brains were on the trunk. and some bone pieces. We know this because the Secret Service said that when Jacqueline Kennedy leaned back to get something off the trunk, it was a piece of John Kennedy's skull. Well, that car was washed while John Kennedy was still in Parkland Hospital. The blood was washed off of it. Now, where in the world would you allow something like that to occur? Officially occur when you're talking about an obvious crime scene, and that blood spatter evidence could be extremely important in telling where the gunshots came from. If we had kept that, we would have known the shots, at least some, came from the front, and that would have blown the whole thing open. But this is what, like 9/11, we cleaned that up over a period of literally a few weeks and shipped the steel to China. We did not even look for explosives or incendiaries. I'm telling you, if you had a 20-story building that was insured and it blew up like that, there's no insurance company that would allow that to go uninvestigated, looking for explosives and incendiaries. But here you have one of the most important crimes ever committed, and we don't even look into that possibility. The anthrax letter attacks are similar. It's just a common thing for these crimes to be investigated superficially, not to follow rigorous crime scene and other. The other thing you want to do is you want to get these people in front of a prosecutor who tells him, let me tell you, when the Watergate burglars, so-called burglars, were in jail, they appeared before a judge. And he said, you're going to tell me the truth, or I'm going to lock you up for 40 years. There were 4 burglars. One of them squealed. And that meant they all went down. And that's how prosecutions work. You go in and you get people and tell them, if you don't tell me the truth, you're going to be buried in the prison system. And let me tell you, rich white guys have a hard time in the prison system. It's not rocket science to investigate these crimes and uncover what really happened. But what we have right now is the farthest we can get, really, from a true investigation.